kind of grown into this thing that I feel has become maybe some of the most important work that I've done in the last decade of my life. And really all it is facilitating safe and comfortable places for people to come and exist and be themselves. There's not much that I do while I'm there except gather people together and make it safe for them. It's been really beautiful.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It could literally save you time and money. Friends, today on the podcast, possibly the most recorded guest ever. I haven't done the research yet, but my dear friend, Kristen LaValley, we jump into a meaningful conversation on leadership, humility, identity, the power of storytelling. We talk about Kristen's latest book, Growing Up Saved. This is one you might want to check out the YouTube or the Spotify because we talk about the cover of her book and it gives you an opportunity to check that out. We also talk about how great leaders create safe spaces where people can feel seen, heard, and most importantly, valued. This is so good, whether you lead at a large level or just a small team. We also talk about the power of writing, which has been coming up more and more lately. I know you're going to love this conversation with Kristen. If you do me a favor. Make sure you follow her on social media, or even better, subscribe to her Substack, where she does a lot of her long-form communication. So now, here's a quick word from our partners and my conversation with Kristen LaValley. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have my dear friend, Kristen LaValley, back on. Kristen, I think you might hold the record for number of times on the podcast.
And I hope I always hold that record.
Well, as long as you keep putting out books, or really you have an open invitation. So anytime you want to chat, you know it's wide open.
Perfect. My favorite podcast to be on.
Well, thank you. And I know that you and I talked a little bit before I hit record that this year, more than ever before, we're leaning into those leadership questions. And so the question that I want to start off with, the question for month number 2, what is the most important skill in leadership?
This is such a great question. I'm so curious what everyone else is going to say. I hope I don't say something that everybody else. How many people have you asked this question?
3. You're the third.
Okay.
So there's only 4
Okay.
weeks, right? So.
Okay. I hope nobody has said this, but I think the most important thing is to be willing to be wrong, and to be willing to be wrong for anybody in your organization or whoever the people are that you lead. We have people that we're willing to be wrong with. Like, I'm okay if you're right about something and I'm wrong about something, but I'm not okay if that person over there is right about something and I'm wrong about something. So I think it's important to always be willing to be wrong, no matter where the competition and the conflict is coming from.
That is a great answer. Nobody else has said it, so you're safe. Boom. Okay, well, let's drill down that a little bit. Where have you seen that done well?
I think women do that really well, honestly. I think women, maybe because we're like predispositioned to believe that we're wrong a lot. I think it's easier for us to put our pride or our ego aside. And I also think women tend to think about the whole a little bit more than men do, like what's good for the whole, what's good for the group. I think women are more inclined to think that way. So we're willing to be wrong about something if it means that we can make something better for somebody else.
If you were coaching somebody on how to develop this skill for themselves and you think about it in your own life, what are some of the practices? What are some of the things that we can do to help develop that? Is it a spirit of humility? Is that another way to kind of say it? Or is it just more like a spirit of curiosity?
Yeah, I think a spirit of curiosity is probably more than a spirit of humility. Maybe those are two of the same things, but I think it's just, being a curious person, being someone who's open to input. I think we can get really defensive and protective of the things that are important to us. And as you grow and mature, you have to kind of practice those skills a little bit, and practice being wrong, and practice your reactions to being wrong, and don't be afraid of being wrong. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
We feel like we have to police our reactions so much. And I think just be willing to go through the process as many times as it takes. And then you'll realize that the stakes aren't really that high most of the time when it comes to being wrong about something. It just feels like it is. But yeah, spirit of curiosity, asking good questions, being willing to be wrong about something that has nothing to do with anybody else, maybe just in your own life, in your family, and your business, whatever it might be. What might you be wrong about? Do a little audit of the things you're holding tightly and see if there's something you're wrong about.
It's funny that you say that. My therapist always says that the moment I'm using the word you more than I'm using the word I, that I'm probably wrong about it.
That does sound like something a therapist would say. That's great.
I was talking about a particular difficult situation, and I was like, he's always doing this and he's always doing that. And he was like, let's flip that. I'm like, whoa, bro. Like, can't you just...
That's not your job. Your job is to validate me.
Can we talk about your retreats? You have done something incredible. If I were to describe you to a friend, I would say Kristen is a content creator. She's obviously an author. She's one of my favorite writers. But now you've become this gatherer of people. These retreats, particularly in England, at Edinburgh. Like you're taking people overseas. You're taking people to cozy coffee cups in the East Coast in the snow. Talk to me about the impetus behind this part of your business and your platform, and talk to me about what you're learning in that.
Oh, I could talk about this the whole time, so just cut me off if I start yapping too much. But I started last year really struggling with the way people were engaging with what I do and the work that I do and the conclusions they were drawing. And I found that I was putting so much energy, so much of my mental and emotional capacity was going towards explaining what I do to other people and trying to make them understand, because people were critical or they thought it was something that it wasn't. And I got just really weary and wondering if I even wanted to do this anymore. Because when your work exists behind a screen, you don't have coworkers. Writing is a relatively solitary craft. It can just, I don't know, you have no way of measuring how you're doing. So I realized that in order for me to keep doing what I was doing, I need to put some skin on it. And so I did one little test trip through another company. We went to Ireland and I hosted it. They planned everything and they created the whole itinerary, booked everything for themselves, and I took a group of 8 women over there. We had a blast, and while I was there getting to know them, watching all this magical things happen, which tend to happen when women get together and have shared pain, I was like, I think I could do this on my own and do a lot more and charge a lot less. So then I started planning different things to do overseas writing trips and in-person retreats, because I just find that the people that are drawn to what I do all tend to carry some kind of trauma, some kind of church hurt, maybe nothing to do with church or spirituality at all, but they've had something hard happen in their lives. And it can be hard to find people that are safe to be around. I call them non-anxious presences, people that you can just sit with and they're not rushing you to some kind of theological conclusion or telling you that your pain isn't being managed well. They're just like, I'm just here with you. And you can experience a lot of healing just sitting next to somebody who's not panicked about where you're at right now. So that's kind of the impetus for it. And it's kind of grown into this thing that I feel has become maybe some of the most important work that I've done in the last decade of my life. And really all it is facilitating safe and comfortable places for people to come and exist and be themselves. There's not much that I do while I'm there except gather people together and make it safe for them. It's been really beautiful.
How much of the weekend or week or, time together is planned versus free-spirited?
It's a good question. I always say it's low pressure and high agency. So you can come and participate in anything that you want to do. There's no pressure. You can opt into things, you can opt out of things. So I'll plan a light schedule. Like for the writing retreats, I'll do one workshop a day. That's optional, and the rest is just their time. We'll maybe plan a group dinner or something together. And even for my retreats that aren't writing related, it's here's some things that we can do. Here's what I'm going to be doing if you want to join me. I'd like us all to have dinner together every night, but you don't have to. And a lot of the women that come on these retreats are neurodivergent. So there's also this group understanding of you don't have to explain yourself if you need to go somewhere else, if you need to put headphones on, if you need to be in your room and not hang out all day. Nobody's going to be like, oh, does she think she's better than us? There's not. It's just this group understanding that we're here to exist and we're here together, and everybody has agency to participate as much as they want. And the women that come really appreciate that. I don't think anybody would come on my retreats that wants a fully structured, like, here's what we're going to do every day. The women that come are the women that need a little bit more space in their retreat experience.
I know a lot of leaders who want to try to do something that feels a little out there. And I love the way you talked about testing it and then doing it. How do you vet the people so that you're safe as well?
Yeah, that is a thing that you have to do, and it's definitely a thing that I do. I have never told someone they can't come, because I've never had to. I've never looked at somebody who's coming and been like, oh, this isn't gonna be good. But I have noticed different, like, political ideologies and things that might cause tension. Those are never a reason to not gather everybody together for me, because I feel confident that I can handle those kind of tensions and those kind of, the relational storms that can come when you've got a stressful political atmosphere and you're gathering people together that hold very radically different views. It can get very complicated. But I also just have a lot of faith in the people that get to the point. There's like several points of contact, right? You have people who follow you and they're just casual, like, lurkers. They just watch what you do. You have the people who DM you. Maybe they email you every now and then. Maybe you recognize their name, and then the relationship grows from there. The people that are as invested in you as a person and in the work that you do enough to spend a significant amount of money to spend time with you when they've never met you in person in a small house in Scotland. There's a level of commitment and risk management there that I feel comfortable taking, because if you're going all the way to pay, most of my retreats overseas are around $2,000. If you're paying $2,000 to go on a writing retreat, to be with women that you had never met before, you're putting a lot of faith in me, and I trust people who trust me. Does that sound narcissistic? Maybe it's like, well, if you trust me, then I can trust your judgment, and I'm not scared of what's going to happen there.
I think it's like an investment. If you're willing to invest in the cause, then I'm willing to take the risk and invest in you.
Yeah. But it does help to know ahead of time, to like get a good feel of who the person is by their social media, but not base everything on their social media. And then I try to get the trip booked mostly out, as quickly as I can, so that we can do Zoom calls leading up to the trip. So we'll do one a month, and then we all get in a group chat. Everybody gets to know each other, so everyone's kind of getting the feel for who everybody is. So by the time we're all gathered in a room, we've got all the, like, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I've gone through, all that stuff's out of the way. Now we can just be in a space together. So we kind of vet each other out that way too.
Talk to me about your love for Scotland, or some of those kind of special writing places that you've that I've seen.
Scotland, I think, is the most literary place in the world, and the perfect place to gather women who want to write about hard things, or anybody who wants to write about hard things, because it's just so dark academia, and it's gloomy and it's rainy, and you can go sit in a coffee shop and feel just like you're living your best romanticized version of your life, which writers tend to like to do. We like to pretend we're just like writing our greatest bestsellers sitting in a coffee shop, or maybe that's just me, I don't know.
No,
but it's
definitely
great.
I have a list of coffee shops that I'd like to go to and order based off of what I need to write.
Oh my gosh. We need to do a trip together. We need to do a men and women trip to Edinburgh together.
Down, 100%.
Put it in your noggin. We're gonna talk about it. But yeah, I think Edinburgh is the best place to do that. England, like anywhere in the UK, is just so, like, I feel like we just romanticize those places, and so our writing brain turns on. But then it's good if your writing brain is not on and you need to just go do something else. There's endless things to see and do and experience, and you're getting all this new sensory input. So even if you don't get anything done that week writing, you've got all this new inspiration in your brain. Lots of dopamine and serotonin to keep you going over the next few writing months.
One of the things that I really believe is that all leaders need to be good communicators, and writing is the best form of communication, especially long form writing. So let's say that you're talking to a high level leader and she or he may not feel like they're a good writer. What are a couple, like, and I think I asked you this question last time, but it's so good because I think so many people need to lean into the practice. What's one of the things or couple things that they can do to start beginning to build that muscle?
It is a muscle. That's what I was going to say. Writing is absolutely a muscle. And I think everyone is a good writer. A writer is someone who writes. So if you decide that you want to communicate through writing, which I think you should. I think everybody should. You just have to practice it and find the different modes of writing and styles of writing that you feel comfortable with and that flow the most naturally for you, which takes a lot of practice to find those. I always tell, when I teach my writing courses, I always teach people to start with poetry. And I know, like, that's, you either, every time I mention poetry, the person is either like, oh, I love poetry, or, oh, okay, so I'm in high school again and you're going to force me to write a poem about a frog, which I understand that. But to be a good prose writer, to practice the writing long form, you have to understand structure and you have to understand rhythm, or you're either going to write in like super blocky sentences or really short to the point sentences, and poetry helps you find flow and rhythm and cadence. And if you're going to start with anything to start practicing, start with writing poetry, and then don't email me how much you hate me for telling you to start with poetry. I promise it makes you a better writer. Just practice. Just practice whatever you like doing. Practice that and see where it goes from there.
I want to jump into the book next, but before I do that, I'm curious. The first time that you and I met, you were living in the RV and you had just found out you were pregnant with twins.
Yeah.
How
Crazy.
old are the twins now, and how's your handful of kids doing?
My 5-fingered handful of children. We are great. The girls are turning 5 in May, which is
wild to me.
Crazy. It went by super fast, but then also dragged on forever. So they'll be in kindergarten. They're in preschool right now. They'll be in kindergarten in the fall, which is insane. Our oldest is in 9th grade, and then we have the 2 in middle school, or the youngest of the 2 will be in middle school next year. So everyone's just getting big, and we're in a totally different stage of life. But everyone's
grader have
great.
temps yet?
What's that?
Temporary driving permit in Ohio. You can get it at 15.
No, he has to wait till he's 16.
Okay, so my middle just got his temps. And we're doing the, hey, this is your first time driving in the snow. Yeah, he's great.
Oh, that's
he's
good.
So great.
That's good.
He's so great. And we're all alive.
Yeah. That's all you can hope for. I'm so glad we have another year. I'm like, I don't know if my nervous system could handle that right now, but he just applied for his first job. He has an interview at Six Flags next week.
Amazing.
So we're just in a different, and we were homeschooling at the time. We homeschooled for 10 years and we stopped that last year. So lots of change, but we've adjusted really well. It's been great.
It's an interesting parallel about where you are with your kids and where you were when kind of the core of this book was really written. There's some similarities there, but I want to start first with the cover of this book. It's so good.
Much. Thank you. I love it.
I full disclosure, I endorsed this book and I was very honored that you would even ask. So I've read it now 1.5 times. And so talk to me about the genesis story behind the cover. And you posted something the other day about when people ask you what the book is about. You kind of put all that together and give us a macro view of the book.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the cover. So we probably talked about this with, even if he doesn't as well, but I'm like a very neurotic person when it comes to cover design. I'm not chill about it at all. We talked
about that and call outs, which I noticed you did again.
Yeah. Yep.
So good.
Yep. I love the call outs. But yeah, for this one, I started gathering ideas for it probably 6 months before I turned in my manuscript, because the cover was such an important piece to what the book is about. So I pieced all these things together, and I was leaning towards paper collage and like junk journaling, and I had all these different ideas. But then I also had this picture of I'll send it to you. It's a Polaroid of me at a VBS camp when I was maybe 9 or 10, and I'm standing there in my little dress and there's a Christian flag behind me, and I just feel like that represents my childhood so much. Like, you do the pledge to the Christian flag, you do the pledge to the Bible, and I'm just there. I'm just like a good little girl.
Wait, so there's a pledge to the Christian flag? Timeout. Is that real?
I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom it stands, one brotherhood uniting all true Christians in service and in love.
The things that I missed growing up Catholic. You
didn't have to pledge to the Bible or anything?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, Catholics, we're just kind of...
You're chill.
We're in and out.
No, you're not chill.
Now, we did have to eat the body and blood, which early on was really... Yeah, it took a little bit to understand transubstantiation. But, okay, so keep going. So...
Okay.
Kristen
So I
Flag,
made,
Polaroid,
yeah.
sorry.
So I made like a Pinterest board and I sent them, I had that picture on the Pinterest board as well, but I put a little note that like, I don't feel like I could put this actual picture on the cover because that leans more towards memoir and like celebrities use photos of themselves on the book cover. I don't know if that would turn people away if it was too like on the nose. So they took all of my ideas and like literally put it all together. So we had the little girl and she's like, it's supposed to be a little paper cutout and they sent this original cover to me and the background was pink. And I was like, we can't do pink. I can't do pink. This is my favorite color. This is like my soul color. And they've somehow figured that out on their own. And then so they sent it to me and it was
It's in
just
all
like
of your pictures, by the way.
I know. That's how you can spot a neurodivergent woman, and she just has one color that she feels really comfortable with. This is it. So they figured that out, and then they sent it to me, and she was just like flat. And I was like, can we crumple her up and mess her up a little bit? Because I wanted to look like I've like tried to cut myself out and tried to be perfect, and then gave up and crumpled it up and threw it away. So that's how we ended up there. That's the neuroses of me figuring out my book covers. But yeah, that was a really, really fun process. I forget the second part of your question, though.
The second part was how do you like to describe what the book is about?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I don't like talking about that, which is what my post is about. I don't like when I'm writing a book and somebody asks me what I'm writing about because I'm finding it as I'm writing. So when somebody's like, what are you writing about? I'm like, well, and I'll tell them the first thing that comes to mind, which would be like the thing that I'm writing about that day or that week. But that's not what the actual book is
let me
about.
ask this question instead. This is a better question. Who is this book perfect for?
That's a great question. This book is perfect for people who either grew up in a faith framework or their faith was nurtured in a framework. Not necessarily you grew up as a kid, but when you came to Jesus, the framework that your faith was nurtured in made you feel really bad about yourself, made you hate yourself. That was my story growing up from birth until mid-30s is when I finally started breaking that self-hatred. But anyone who's ever felt like there's just something about them that God doesn't like, or that's more makes faith more complex for them than it does for everyone else. I wrote this so that those people, one, will feel like there's not something wrong with you. This is just the way God wired you. And also to give them hope that there's a way to move through that process and move past that stage of faith where you're just like, so God hates me? Okay, cool. Because where do you go from there? I wanted to show there is a way to move through faith instead of fracturing yourself by stuffing down what you're feeling or by completely walking away. There's a way to move through faith and find a faith that doesn't, as I say in the book, feel like someone's foot is on your neck.
Yeah, one of the things as I feel like I've gotten to know you over the last 5 years, is you've always been pro-church, right?
Yeah.
You've always been pro-Jesus. You've always been pro-church. There's never been anything that's been like, you're not, you didn't write this from a standpoint of visceral reaction. Strong emotion for sure.
Yeah.
Strong emotion for sure, but there's no hate in this writing. And I think that that's really important, that you can love the church and be hurt by the church and still have that kind of cheeky humor about it, which is my favorite part of the whole book is the cheeky humor. Talk to me about naming the chapters, because all the chapters are named after like classic 90s, like.
Yep. It's like a parody of a parody on Christian culture.
Yeah. So how did you come up? Like, let me just read a couple. If you haven't bought the book yet, you should pre-order it right now. Chapter 1, friends are friends forever unless you backslide. Chapter 2, the pressure-driven life. Chapter 3, dare you to doubt. Chapter 4, what would Jesus do? He'd like you, and you just go, I mean, it's as my son would say, they're bars, right? They're just bar after bar after bar. Yeah. So talk to me about that process.
So I wanted kind of what you're saying before. I didn't write this with anger. I didn't write this as a vendetta. There's no like burn it all down in it. And I think that's what people assume when you write a book like that. So it started with, how can I incorporate my humor in a way so that when people open the book, they know that I'm not coming for their sacred cows. I'm not like burning your world down. I'm not saying that I totally resent the way that I grew up. I wanted to just kind of have fun with it and show like these are the things from my childhood that these things were weird. It was weird that we had these parts of our Christian upbringing that were as integral to our faith framework as like the scriptures that we memorized. This was weird. This is a weird time to grow up Christian, but like we can laugh about it, right? Maybe not everybody can laugh about it, but if you can laugh about those kind of things, you can read this book and understand that this is a book on healing and not a book on like a vendetta against the evangelical church. Yeah, coming up with those was super fun. Those were not the original titles, but when it got to the point where we were working through the titles, we were going back and forth and it was just getting so serious. And I'm like, no, we gotta shake this up a little bit. And I don't know. So when I sent the email to my editor, I was like, okay, stick with me here. And I sent this whole thing explaining why I wanted it. She's like, no, these are great. I'm like, okay, I thought I was gonna have to fight for that. But everybody was just down. And the funny thing is, so I think it's chapter 8. It's I Kissed Hating Myself Goodbye, which is a play on I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which is a book written by Joshua Harris, who has since recanted it, unpublished it. He went on a little apology tour. So I met him a couple months ago at an event.
Tell me about that.
So I met him. I walked up to him. I talked to him. He's doing a tour with Hillary McBride, who's the author of Holy Hurt. And she's a therapist who talks about healing from spiritual trauma. And he's doing this with her. And the night that I went and saw him in New York City. He apologized not just for his book, but for the abuse he participated in at the church that he pastored. And I was just so touched by his genuine, what really felt like a genuine apology and taking responsibility. And he also explained how he got to where he got when he wrote the book. And it was just this beautiful, it's everything you would want somebody who has perpetuated harm to say to you. And as I was listening to him, I was like, I will never get apologies from the people who hurt me, but I'm going to accept his apology and feel like that was mine. So afterwards, I didn't tell him all of that when I met him. I should have. What I said was, I wrote a book and I did a parody of your book as a chapter title. I was like, it's called I Kissed Hating Myself Goodbye. Like, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Get it? And he was like, yeah, I get it. And I was like, but it's not about purity culture. I actually didn't even read your book when I was a teenager. That part of the world never even taught me, or even it never even reached me. And he's like, well, it would be okay if you did write about that. I was like, but I didn't. And later I was like, why did I just say that to Josh Hare? But I sent him a copy of my book and I'm going on his podcast, so it all works out in the end.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that so random? Like, when I wrote the chapter title, never would I've ever thought Josh Harris and I would cross paths, but there I would just blurted it out. It's what I do best.
So the book is actually full of your blurts. Like
it really is.
So there's a lot of stories that are directly connected to you. One of my favorite is the Cracker Barrel story. Will you please tell it?
Oh, my criminal history. So when I was 12, I was very much in the Kristen's a pastor's kid and she's a goody-goody type of bullying at school, because my dad was also a teacher at that school, which is another level of trauma we should talk about someday. It was not a great idea in 7th grade. So I was on the basketball team. We went on an away game and all the girls were like, I did this bad thing and I did that bad thing. And I'm like, I do bad stuff too. And they're like, yeah, okay, sure. Everyone at this table believes that you do bad things. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to impress these girls. So I took the little triangle game that's on all the tables and I put it under my shirt. And I was like, guys, I'm going to steal this. And they're like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. And I walked out with it. And as soon as we got into the van, the girls ratted me out and told the coach that I had stole that game. So when I got home, I stole money from my mother. I corrected my crime by committing another crime. I took it out of her purse, put it in an envelope, and sent it off to the Cracker Barrel powers at B and begged them not to press charges against me.
And so then continue on with the part of the story that actually takes us to the tension that comes with theology like that, right? Because I think it's
which one
of the book. Well, this idea about comparison and wanting to be and all of that kind of that culture of saying you have to be a certain kind of way in order to fit in. Or you don't. And I just think that when you can pull from personal stories like that, there's so much healing for people that can say, we all have a version of the Cracker Barrel story, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad person.
We're not all criminals. But I have so many stories like that. I also talk in the book about the pressure to speak in tongues to be approved for the work and the denomination that I was in. You had to speak in tongues to be considered worthy to do ministry, because if you spoke in tongues, that was God's sign that he had approved you for the work. So there were many things that I did to just you pick up what your community wants from you. You pick up on the expectations, and everybody wants belonging. Everybody wants acceptance. And most of us are willing to do whatever we can to acquire those things. Sometimes we just fumble our way. We steal Cracker Barrel games, or we compromise ourselves in another way. We fracture our identity, even in less serious ways. We hide the things that we like. We hide the music that we listen to. We follow the social patterns and try to figure out the best way to get acceptance and validation or elevation. Like, how do I get elevated to a position of leadership? Well, I have to act like that. I have to be like that person. And so we fracture ourselves, and then we begin to resent the way that God made us, because why couldn't he just made me those things easily and naturally? Why do I have to steal a game or fake speaking in tongues or any of the other things we do to get to sit at the table and be the cool kid and then still not be the cool kid? Didn't so work.
True. It's so true. One of the things that struck me as I was going through the book this time versus when I first read it was the tension around labels. Mm-hmm. And diagnosis, and I was I was reading in preparation for today, and one of the chapters talks about how the harm that can come with the label, pastor's kid, or this or that, or goody goody, or all of those things that we just talked about. But then also the freedom that came when you heard you were ADHD and kind of had something to put handles on the pain that you had experienced.
Yeah,
you're talking to a lot of leaders and a lot of parents. How do we live in that tension?
That's a really good question, because there is that, like, I don't want to accept a label and then get too lackadaisical in my acceptance of that label. Well, I'm just this way because of the way God wired me, or because of this, or this is just how I am. This is just who I have to be and how I engage in the world. But then you also don't want to not accept a label that could be helpful for you learning how to manage the way that you are in the world, and not let your behaviors that are natural to you negatively affect the people around you or your own life. And there's this tension of saying, yes, this is the way God has wired me. This is the way that I am. But there are also things that I can do, or maybe I should say and, not but. And yes, and that's what we like to do in leadership, right? So yes, and the and. And there are ways that I can learn about how I am and how I'm wired, and learn how to better manage myself so that I can exist and engage in my world a little bit better. For me, getting diagnosed with ADHD cured my self-hatred in a way that even though I wrote basically a whole book about that, I don't know that I'll ever be able to accurately describe what that was like on a spiritual level, on a supernatural level. It was this like, oh, I'm not broken. This is just the way my brain is wired. Nothing caused it. Nothing can fix it. Nothing can prevent it. This just is what it is. There's so much freedom in knowing that. And then there's also, now I know what to call it so that I know how to seek support in that, and find ways to make my life a little bit easier, because ADHD is not always fun, and it's not always like, oh, this is a fun person, she just forgets things. No, it can really make your life harder, and it can make other people's lives harder as well. So getting the diagnosis was like, okay, one, I don't have to hate myself. And now I have to figure out how to move through the world in a way that does not make other people hate me too. It's a lot.
But it's, that's the work of conscious leadership, I think, is that when you can give yourself that little bit of grace, and then you can give even more grace for the world around you. I tend to be the kind of guy that will be like, the entire world hates me. Like I'll kind of catastrophize some of those feelings, especially when it's like, oh, the whole world's out to get me, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I just, working through some frameworks, some healthy frameworks, and how to deal with that stuff I believe has probably made me a better parent, and probably made me a better leader. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't spent some time finding frameworks. And that's really what some of that stuff is. Where do you tell somebody to start?
Like to start figuring themselves out. Little online test here and there. We've gone through this process now in our house. We are almost a 100% neurodivergent household. There's 7 of us. I don't think there's a neurotypical brain in the mix. So we've kind of, I have become the hyper vigilant observer of everyone else, because I became that of myself. And I think just attuning to the way that you are and the way that you operate, and noticing the things that are challenging for you. And usually the things that are challenging for you are a clue to I don't want to say weaknesses, because it's not always weaknesses. It's just this thing is a little bit harder for me than it is for everyone else. And when you start to notice those things, you can start to research or look up books or whatever from other people that have struggled with those same things. And you follow the breadcrumbs until it leads you to where you need to be. And that's not always going to be be a diagnosis. Sometimes it's just, oh, this is a little behavior that I picked up in childhood or as a response to some kind of wound, like the things that you talk about in your book as well. There's these little breadcrumbs that we can follow to figure out why we are the way that we are, and then we can follow those breadcrumbs to a better house, a better cottage in the woods where there's not an evil witch waiting for us. I don't know where I'm going with that analogy, but that's like the ADHD. Sorry, that's just how I am. I can't help it.
It's good. It's a perfect transition to one of my favorite terms that you use in the book, spiritual storytelling.
Yeah.
Talk to us about why spiritual storytelling is so important.
Storytelling is the most important part of the human experience. I approach it and think about it in the way that God has chosen to reveal himself to us, which has been through story. That's his primary mode of communication with us, is through story. And so that is our primary way of connecting with each other. And I think story has been so commodified and used and abused and manipulated and into this thing where now when it comes to Christian conversations or Christian books, we tend to diminish the art and the craft and the importance of story because we think it's just all anecdotal. Like, just give me the meat. Just give me, like, tell me what you want me to know. But story is how we draw each other in and how we connect and how we teach people and how we move people. And spiritual storytelling is the story of God's movement through your life. And what a beautiful way to connect with someone is telling, here's how God has moved through my life. It's my favorite thing to talk about, and such a cool thing that my life has lent towards story being not just a thing that I love, but a thing that I also can do as a career and as a ministry.
And one of the things, as I was looking at that, I was thinking to myself, this is probably the best way to share the gospel. This is your testimony. Spiritual storytelling is your testimony, testifying to how God moves in your life without judgment or shame.
Yeah.
And I think you do that beautifully well in the book. And books like this, they're so personal. They're so, people in your story already know that you live a pretty outward facing life with your writing. How did your parents take it? How did that whole discussion go down?
Well, there wasn't really a discussion before I started writing it, which was not a great idea because once people hear you're writing a story about your childhood, they assume. Thankfully, my parents didn't assume, but other people assumed what it was going to be about and came to me in defense of them. And I'm like, why do you think that I'm going to write a vendetta against my parents? This is interesting. Let's talk about that. But they're just, my mom has this attitude of like, whatever comes up will come up. And she's like, well, deal with whatever comes, Kristen. She's like a very prissy Southern woman. She's really strong and she'll never let you see her sweat. But now that the book is done and they're starting to read it, they're realizing that they got off really easy in the book. in the book. So my mom actually called me the other day and she's like, I think we should do a podcast together since everyone thinks I'm mad at you. So we're working on figuring out what we want to talk about. And I sent her the book and I was like, you need to make annotations and write like where I exaggerated or where you would have told the story differently. Not that they show up in the book that much. I feel like they're only in there a couple times. But it's been great. It's opened up some great conversations. I think they're surprised at some of the things I was struggling with. Like when my mom called me, she was like, you cut your hair off because you thought it had sin in it? Like she thought that was so crazy. She had no idea that that's why I wanted to chop all my hair off when I was 15. And she's like, where'd you pick that up? And I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't trace those breadcrumbs to figure out where I convinced myself sin is held in your hair follicles, but that's what I thought. So I chopped it all off. But it's gone better than it probably would have if, or than it probably should have. Maybe my parents have just gotten really cool. I don't know.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's so good. Okay. I have one more question to ask you.
Okay.
Before I do, where is the best place to learn all things, Kristen? Your trip. I know you do long form writing, of course, on Substack, and you can follow and support Kristen on Substack, which I recommend. And then also your website, KristenLaValley.com. But like Instagram, is that still really the place where you're doing most of your work?
Yeah. That's where you'll get a little bit of everything. If you like more long form, Substack. If you just want a hub, the website. But if you want to follow my life, just know you don't know what you're going to get every day. Like some days it's going to be something spiritual and some days it's going to be whatever is going on in my life that day. So, just be down for the ride if you follow me on Instagram.
I did message Kristen the other day and was like, You just bring a whole different flavor to my algorithm. Like I get a lot of golf, I get a lot of sports, a lot of podcaster, leadership, Jesus stuff, and then Kristen flies by with a conversation about her uterus, right? Like it's
Let me know if you're on hysterectomy recovery talk yet. That's my gift to your life, Tony. Hysterectomies and uteruses and whatever else I feel like talking about.
You know, I do feel like I feel like I'm learning stuff that I didn't know. I didn't know about endometriosis.
I'm here to teach
about some of the things that you've been struggling with, and I appreciate the openness. And you know, I try to pray for you when I see it. I know that there's
thanks.
So
I appreciate that.
All right, last question this year is different than anything I've ever asked before, because this year we're focusing on leadership development. One of the questions that I've been asking people is about the greatest leader that you've ever met. So it has to be someone who you met in person, who had an impact on your life. It could be, I guess it could be virtual if you want. I'm trying to avoid the Jesus answer is what I'm trying to avoid, if I can just be really
Didn't even cross my mind. What does that say about me?
So the greatest leader you've ever met and what made them so great?
That's a really great question. Well, the first person that comes to mind is I only had one youth leader growing up because we moved around too much, and my dad always took over churches that were dying, so there was never any youth program. But I had one youth leader. Her name was Becky Thompson, and she was just this older lady who loved teenagers, and she never did anything that a youth pastor would ever do. Like there was no like big lights or like big lessons or, you know, this object lesson that's gonna make you shock your mind for you. It was nothing like that. She was just like this sweet lady that saw me and treated me like she saw me, and she was probably the first person to ever lead me in a human way first, not I want you to get to this place spiritually and I need to teach you these things. I see these things that are wrong with you and I need to teach you. She just saw me as a person and treated me with dignity and respect, and that meant a lot to me as a teenager. I'd probably have a better answer for you if I thought about it a little bit more, but that's who came to my mind first. She was just a sweet old lady being herself and loving me the way that she knew to love. It was great.
I think that's a great answer. And one of my favorite parts about asking that question this year so far has been 9 times out of 10, it's that person.
I love that.
There's some just real consistent themes of it's that person who took care of my soul as much as they took care of everything else in my life. So
that's beautiful.
So good. Bonus question. Is there another book in the works already?
Oh, well, there are ideas, but I'm not contracted. And when this book comes out, that's the end of my contract with Tyndale. So I will be shopping books around. I'll be shopping an idea. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Can't wait.
But I won't tell you about it yet because I have like 5 of them.
Well, as always, I deeply appreciate our time together and your voice and on the internet and in my life. And so thank you for always willing to say yes.
Yeah, thanks for always having me.
Hey, friends, what a great conversation with Kristen. I love the way that she thinks about spiritual storytelling. For me, that was one of the highlights of the whole dialogue, was this idea about spiritual storytelling, about what it means and about how we can get better at it as a testimony to God in our lives. Now, as you know, this year, we're ending each podcast episode with a closing coaching question, a question that you can wrestle with. This week's question: where in your leadership might humility, specifically the willingness to be wrong, unlock deeper trust, growth, and connection? Where in leadership right now might humility, specifically the willingness to be wrong, unlock deeper trust, growth, and connection? Maybe another way to think about it is, where are you not willing to be wrong? A lot of conviction there. Hopefully for you too. As always, I'm forever thankful for you, our podcast family, the bold ones. If there's anything I can do for you, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Tony@twmilt.com. And hey, do me a favor, check out my new website, twmilt.com, followtoleadcoaching.com. It all goes to the same place now. I'm so excited and thankful for my dear friend Elizabeth, who helped rebrand the whole website. So check that out. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.